What we were going to do to look at for this warm-up is look at principal values. So as a review, I'm just going to use the bottom of this here. Sine and tangent, you want to focus on just quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. So from negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2. Okay? And for cosine, we're going to focus on from 0 to pi, so quadrant 1, 2. Okay? It's also nice to have your reference angle chart here as well. So remember in radians, we have 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, and pi over 3, pi over 2. Sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, so sine, remember, it's going to be 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, all over 2. You're going to need your roots. Okay, cosine is going to be the other way around. So we're going to start at 1, go down to 0, 3, 2, 1, root, all over 2. Tangent, take sine divided by cosine. Over here would be undefined. Okay, so 1/2 divided by root 3 over 2 would be root 3 over 3. This would be 1. This would be root 3. Okay, so it's nice to have these reminders at the bottom of your page. Okay, so instructions say just look at principal values. Number 1, you have an inverse sine of 0. Okay, so if I look at my reference angle chart, okay, the angle that would have a sine of 0 would be 0. And that's on the x-axis in between negative pi over 2 and positive pi over 2. So that's good. Okay, now we're looking for the inverse sine of negative 1. Okay, so we have to think about this one a little bit more. This is going to be part of the angle measurements that are going to be on our axes. Okay, so here, again, it's either going to be, it's definitely not 0 because our y value there would be 0. At negative pi over 2, remember our ordered pair there is 0, negative 1. So notice we need a y value that's negative 1. The y value here is negative 1, so my answer would be negative pi over 2. Okay. Now we have tangent that's equal to 0. Okay, so it's got to be in quadrant 4 or quadrant 1. So inverse tangent, that's 0. So here's my reference angle chart. A tangent that's equal to 0. So my angle would be 0. Alright. And then for the next one, okay, now we're looking for inverse sine of root 2 over 2. So if I look here, root 2 over 2, the angle measurement would be pi over 4, which is in the first quadrant, so we're good to go. Okay. Now we're looking for an angle measurement that would give me a tangent of root 3. So here's root 3, tangent. My angle measurement would be pi over 3. Okay. Inverse cosine of negative root 3 over 2. So let's think about this one. Negative cosine, we're limited to just quadrant 1 or 2. Cosine is positive in that quadrant, so it can't be in quadrant 1. It's got to be in quadrant 2. Okay, so what angle measurement, or what reference angle would give me a positive root 3 over 2 for cosine? That's pi over 6. Okay, so I know my reference angle here is pi over 6. So if a half a circle is 6 pi over 6, I'm going to take away 1 pi over 6. My angle would be 5 pi over 6. Okay. Alright, inverse cotangent of negative root 3. Okay, so this would mean tangent is equal to negative 1 over root 3. Okay, if you rationalize that, you would get negative root 3 over 3. Okay, so here we go. In order for it to be a negative tangent, it would have to be in quadrant 4. Can't be in quadrant 1. Okay, so we're looking for an angle where it would be in quadrant 4. So let's take a look at your reference angle chart. To get root 3 over 3, your reference angle would be pi over 6. Okay, so to get in the 4th quadrant, my angle measure would be negative pi over 6. Okay, number 8, cosecant is negative 1. Okay, so remember, cosecant is 1 over sine. Okay, so this means sine would be, inverse sine is still negative 1. Alright, 1 over negative 1, which is still negative 1. Okay, so what angle measurement would give you a sine of 1? That would be pi over 2. So let's think. Okay, so again, we're looking at a sine value that equals negative 1. That's got to be this ordered pair again, that y value of negative 1. So we're looking at negative pi over 2 again. Alright, lastly, you have inverse secant of 2 root 3 over 3. Okay, so this means cosine. Inverse cosine would be 3 over 2 root 3. Okay, and if I rationalize that, we get, let's see, 3 root 3 over 2, 3. So those 3's cross out, and we get root 3 over 2. Okay, so we're looking for inverse cosine. That would give me a positive root 3 over 2. So there's root 3 over 2 for cosine. So my angle would be pi over 6.